In this video, we will introduce the prep for DP-300 Administering Microsoft Azure SQL Solutions exam. What is DP-300 Administering Microsoft Azure SQL Solutions exam? DP-300 exam overview. Skills measured in DP-300 exam. Why DP-300 is a high-value certification. Proven study strategy for exam success. 1. You have an on-premises Microsoft SQL server that uses the file tables and file stream features. You plan to migrate to Azure SQL. Which service should you use? A. Azure SQL Database. B. SQL Server on an Azure Virtual Machine. C. Azure SQL Managed Instance. D. Azure Database for MySQL. 2. You need to provide an implementation plan to configure data retention for Research DB1. The solution must meet the security and compliance requirements. What should you include in the plan? A. Configure the deleted databases settings for Research SRVOL. B. Deploy and configure an Azure Backup Server. C. Configure the advanced data security settings for Research DBL. D. Configure the Manage Backups settings for Research SRVOL. 3. You need to recommend which configuration to perform twice to enable access to the primary and secondary replicas of DB3. The solution must meet the availability requirements. What should you recommend? A. Configure virtual network service endpoints. B. Enable database firewall rules. C. Create database scoped credentials. D. Configure connection strings that reference the read-write listener. 4. You have an Azure SQL database server named SQL SRV1 that hosts 10 Azure SQL databases. The databases perform slower than expected. You need to identify whether the performance issue relates to the use of TempDB on SQL SRV1. What should you do? A. Run query store-based queries. B. Review information provided by SQL Server Profiler-based traces. C. Review information provided by Query Performance Insight. D. Run dynamic management view-based queries. 5. You have an Azure SQL database named SQLDB1. You need to minimize the possibility of query store transitioning to a read-only state. What should you do? A. Have the value of data flush interval. B. Double the value of statistics collection interval. C. Have the value of statistics collection interval. D. Double the value of data flush interval. 6. You plan to move 100 GB databases to Azure. You need to dynamically scale resources consumption based on workloads. The solution must minimize downtime during scaling operations. What should you use? A. An Azure SQL Database Elastic Pool. B. SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machines. C. An Azure SQL Database Managed Instance. D. Azure SQL databases. 7. You are building a database backup solution for a SQL Server database hosted on an Azure virtual machine. In the event of an Azure regional outage, you need to be able to restore the database backups. The solution must minimize costs. Which type of storage accounts should you use for the backups? A. Locally redundant storage, LRS. B. Read Access Geo-Redundant Storage, RAW-GRS. C. Zone Redundant Storage, ZRS. D. Geo-Redundant Storage. 8. You have an Azure SQL database. Users report that the executions of a stored procedure are slower than usual. You suspect that a regressed query is causing the performance issue. You need to view the query execution plan to verify whether a regressed query is causing the issue. The solution must minimize effort. What should you use? A. Performance recommendations in the Azure portal. B. Extended events in Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS. C. Query Store in Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, SSMS. D. Query Performance Insight in the Azure portal. 9. You have a data warehouse in Azure Synapse Analytics. You need to ensure that the data in the data warehouse is encrypted at rest. What should you enable? A. Transparent Data Encryption, TDE. B. Advanced Data Security for this database. C. Always encrypted for all columns. D. Secure transfer required. 10. You have an Azure SQL database named DB1 on a server named Server 1. The Intelligent Insights Diagnostics log identifies that several tables are missing indexes. You need to ensure that indexes are created for the tables. What should you do? A. Run the dbccSQLPERF command. B. Run the dbccdb reindex command. C. Modify the automatic tuning settings for DB1. D. Modify the query store settings for DB1. Check the correct answers for each question. Subscribe Passert for more IT exam prep.